I will warn you that if you connect with Hinsey on LinkedIn, he does things like use phrases like skibbity riz or something like that. I don't know.
Straight fire, bussin', and
Straight fire,
slay.
bustin'. And now Mitchell's going to cut this and use this as the intro. You realize that now.
I know.
I feel old.
Hope I didn't ice your game, man.
No one my age says those words in that order, Mom.
Google and Samsung are partnering together for higher-end audio, and Epson sues over lumens. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 699, recorded Friday, January 10th, 2025. A higher standard. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest AV news and information we have gathered. My name is Tim Albright. Happy New Year. Welcome back to the show. It's been a couple weeks since we've had a brand new one of these, so thanks so much for joining us. Happy 2025. And with us, talk about the news and information. First and foremost, you know her, you love her, Bren Walker from Kierkegaard. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Tim. Happy New Year. Great to see you and see everybody else.
Good to see you. Good to see you. A young man who will beat me to ISE simply because he lives closer to Barcelona than I do. Justin Dawson from Dublin City University. Welcome, sir.
Am I actually going to beat you? Because I arrive on the Monday and you arrive on the Sunday.
The joke was you're closer, Justin. That was what the joke was.
Happy New Year. Great to be back.
Good to see you, sir. And last but not least, a buddy of mine, almost an old buddy. He's younger than me. So Brad Hinsey from Crestron. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Always glad to be here with you.
Good to see you. So we're going to start off. Actually, we had a number of lawsuits last year. This one actually got settled. Epson sort of kind of won a lumens lawsuit. They secured a settlement with projector manufacturer JmGo over allegedly inflated brightness claims, forcing the company, JmGo, not Epson, to dramatically reduce its advertised specifications across multiple models. According to the settlement announced this week, JmGo will slash the advertised brightness rating on its popular projectors by up to 59%, with one model going from 4,000 to 1,900 lumens, another model going from 3,200 down to 1,300. The agreement requires JmGo to adopt the industry standard ISO 21118 measurement system, a move that will, Epson's VP of Consumer Sales, says that will help combat misleading marketing practices that have, quote unquote, proliferated on online marketplaces where terms like LED lumens and lamp brightness often confuse consumers trying to compare projector performance. Justin, I'm going to start with you on this. This comes down to what I call specs and specs, right?
Yeah.
A lumen is a number. Do you care what the lumen is, or do you care how bright the actual experience is?
We do care about the lumens, and
okay.
and as integrators that sell us end products for our campus, it is very important. Like when I read the stories, I was like, wow, that is more than half of the lumens that they were advertising. Like, and that's it's false advertising, and it's to me, Tim, I believe it's the start of what could be a lot more. And I don't just mean projectors, a
lot more lawsuits like this?
A lot more lawsuits like this. Like the times where you go over to ISE and, I'm not going to name any brands. I'm not going to speculate that any brands do it. But you see 8K projectors or 8K screens, you see 16K screens, and you're going, really? Are you going to prove that it's actually real 4K? We talk about streaming, and and of course the famous one that I brought up last episode that I was on about video bars. Video bars is going to be a big thing over at ISE again. But like all these video bars saying we are doing 4K, but then as the end user you go, well, how many of these streaming platforms is actually doing 4K? Or is it being pushed up? And that's where standards is a very important role. Like you see across the board, Tim, you see MS Teams certified, Zoom certified. I think we need to really, really push down and knuckle down hard and go, these are the ISO standards that people have to adhere to.
This to me is the days of manufacturers or resellers of manufacturer products being able to like say it does this, but it really doesn't, those are quickly coming to an end. Because all it really would take is for everybody designing and integrating AV to talk together the minute you use a product and say it actually does not do this, and for us to have one brain that can tell us those answers, and all of a sudden these like marketing ploys to get you to buy something won't be effective. Going from 4,000 to under 1,500, that's a change in use case. Now I can't use that projector where I plan to use it. It's a pretty big deal. And, I feel like there's certainly entities in the industry that benefit from a lack of standardization, but our users don't. And the perception that AV can't perform is in part because of our lack of consistent standardization, right? I mean, look at the separation of AV and video, audio and video signal. Just that.
Yeah.
And why we still struggle with trying to keep those synced. I mean, this to me is like, as we use AI more and as there is a general knowledge of what products can and cannot do, those claims are going to be harder to make and they're going to be dispelled much faster.
I couldn't agree more. Like this key buzzword that's going to keep on popping up at trade shows, AI. Now, it's going to be a great debate that's going to roll on for years is what is real AI and what is machine learning and so forth. But Brent, like even going on that, Brent and Tim, like I when I read the story, I thought, here it just proves how important it is to have a very qualified tech team, whether it be on campus or whether it be in the private sector or whatever, that can go, no, you're talking nonsense. This projector is not doing what it says on the tin. And that's where I go back and say...
Hang on. I might be reading more into what you're saying. However, what it appeared you were implying is that AV technicians on college campuses and in corporate spaces have the tools and the techniques to say whether or not something is 5,000 lumens or 4,000 lumens.
They should.
But they don't.
But they should.
They simply don't,
this
dude.
Back. I know they don't, Tim, but this goes back to...
A lot of things should happen. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't tell the difference from your eyes, right? The difference between 5,000 and 4,000 and 1,000 lumens, right? That's... But nobody's got a measurement tool, bud. I mean, they just don't.
They might not have the measurement tools, but they should be learning the qualifications to CTS or so forth to learn about how to measure these things. Like, look, I can say that...
It's not rocket science.
It's not rocket science.
It's
but
not,
I could,
right? I'm just saying they don't simply have the tools to do so. I mean,
Tim, I'll go a step further and be very controversial and go, how many integrators, both private and public sector, do you see using light meters when they go into a room?
Very few.
Very few. Yeah. And that's why we need to improve the standards.
And I'll just say that those specifications matter because a lot of times you're making a decision on an edge, right?
Yes.
And you may, if you know otherwise, choose to go up a projector, right? If you are close to that edge and that number is not correct, it is not going to perform in the field. And as you're designing, you would have been better off to go up one. Once you bought it, guess what?
But how important then, Bren, is it to, like, instead of just an integrator or a distributor saying, oh, here's the box and here's what it says on the box, you need to put that into a live environment and test it side by side. And if you don't, well, maybe that's your own fault as an end user.
Or at least ask for an installation in the wild,
Yes.
right? Even if you're not going to put it in your space, nobody has a space, so few spaces are so unusual that you shouldn't be able to have some place within 100 miles that is using that projector that you're thinking about in a similar condition. And they should be able to direct you to someone who you can talk to who can say, yep, it worked for me in my lecture hall that's for 300 people.
Hansi, I'm going to bring you in on this because the one thing, Crestron does not sell projectors. Let's start there. So he has no
Good for
specs
you.
and specs on that. We might be breaking something here. I don't know. But one of the things that the industry has gone to, and I think it's a good thing, but somebody can disagree with me here, but they've gone to selling solutions, right? We don't care what the lumens are. We don't care what the SPL is, the dB, whatever, of that speaker or that microphone. Tell me what you need to do, and I'll provide you a solution, right? How does that fit into this argument where I guess Brent's right. If it says 10,000 lumens, it's darn well better give me 10,000 lumens if you're going to design it to be a space of 10,000 lumens. But Justin doesn't mean Justin specifically does care, but the average Justin does not care. He just needs it to show up. He needs
Fake Justins.
the PowerPoint presentation and the instructional video to show up on the screen. So how do those two things jibe?
Well, I think that when you're speccing a solution, as Bren said, if you are designing one around a particular performance, a particular level of performance, you need that spec to actually deliver on that. And there is the difference between real technical specifications that you're going to be designing around versus those marketing specifications that manufacturers use to highlight some feature of their particular product and try and stand out in another way, right? When we have a clearly defined specification for something, and if you meet that specification, you should declare it. If you don't, and you don't want to admit that you don't, then some people like to go and invent their own thing. And so I think that there are very important applications where you have to have clear specification, right? And you have to meet and land on that spec. And we run into this frequently, even in the world of, say like Teams certified devices, right? And making sure that those products actually deliver or work well on Teams. There are manufacturers that invest heavily to make sure that they do, right? And so that certification is valuable as a representation that, hey, this will work this way, right? And then there's those fly-by-nights that claim to work, but they don't, right? And then they'll come up with some other marketing specification to try and claim that. And so I think that there is an important space for really clear specifications that are standardized. Now, there are times and places where maybe you don't need to all adhere because there's still an arms race to develop that technology, to develop the best approach. So I wouldn't say that we need standards for everything, but there are certain very clear areas where you should have specific standards that people adhere to consistently.
And Tim, I'll say that even though that IT end user or AV end user is buying a solution to the physical plant, they're buying hardware, right?
Okay.
And that hardware may be used in that solution for a year or 18 months or whatever, and then maybe whoever the solution is based on platform's now gone, and guess what I'm doing? I'm breaking all that stuff down and reusing it in a different way. So even though that person trying to solve the PowerPoint presentation in the immediate term, they're still buying a piece of hardware that is supposed to deliver on a manufacturer promise.
All right. I will leverage an old friend of mine's saying about standards, and then we can move on. The nice thing about standards is there's so many to choose from. So we can leave it at that. Lex story comes to us actually from a whole bunch of different places. Samsung and Google have teamed up. We're recording this on Friday the 10th. Quite frankly, there's a whole lot that came out of CES, and I almost did that story. And I'm like, there's too much to go through. I'm actually going to kick it to Matt Scott and the ResiWeek show. I might pick one up next week. But this is kind of a cool thing, though. Samsung and Google, they've teamed up. They're integrating. So Samsung is technically the one integrating Eclipsa audio. It is a 3D audio technology co-developed with Google across its 2025 display lineup, Samsung's display lineup. The new system, which gives content creators control over spatial audio elements, including sound positioning and environmental reflections, It marks Samsung's latest push to dominate their premium display market. The two tech giants are also partnering, this is another standard, with the Telecommunications Technology Association. They're crafting a certification program, ensuring consistent quality standards for Eclipsa audio-enabled devices. Bren, you are one of the more smartest people that I know when it comes to this space. That was a weird way to say space because it's also audio, spatial audio. What was your initial reaction when you saw this?
I think that it's great for residential,
Okay.
where you have very predictable sort of spaces in terms of where something like this is going to go. And, you know, if you have you've got your home theater and your partner doesn't want to see speakers all over the place, you can get the experience. How great is it? I need to acoustically hear it first to know. Because you're whatever the architectural structure of whatever room you put it in, it's going to matter. We know that some of those devices are able to actually sort of map the room and understand it well, or well enough for the ear at home. Probably well enough for your medium-sized conference room or smaller. The minute you get into larger rooms where you're going to have more audio sources, then the efficacy of something like this starts to become a question. But there's so much market in the ones that in the areas that I described that, you know, this is the evolution of processing power for audio, right? And the march towards trying to make audio sound the most natural. Whether or not creators do much uptake in it, I think, you know, it's sort of the same story that we heard about Atmos and about, you know, film and all of that. And I haven't seen the latest numbers, but I'd be surprised if more than, you know, 30 or 40% of films are using much more than 15 to 20% of all those other channels. So it's just it's still going to be time for creators to actually expend the effort to do that, which is not a small effort. But it feels very residential to me, and maybe slightly resimercial, I guess is what you call it.
That's what I call it, and I get in trouble for it. So, hey, you can get in trouble with me. Hansi, actually, Bren set me up very well. She didn't know she did. Crestron sits right in the middle of residential and commercial. You and I have both watched things start in residential that were really, really cool, and Bren mentioned one of them, Atmos, that folks for a minute were like, oh my gosh, this would be fantastic in a conference room. And she's not wrong, where I don't know of but 2 conference rooms in the States, and I don't know everything, but I do know of 2 that have an Atmos system installed. Specific installation, very, very unique use case. When you look at stuff like this that is you know, very much resi-centered, how much do you see Google and Samsung getting together in other aspects, because they both have commercial AV and commercial IT interests?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. We'll see, though, if it gets traction, right? Like Bren is saying, if it gets fully leveraged and put out there. I think one of the things that is interesting about this particular thing is that this is open source, too. This is an open source spec versus some of the closed source by like Dolby, which I think is an interesting move. I mean, that's certainly consistent with Google's move. They're very well familiar with going out there and, you know, open source and compete against these proprietary things. So we'll see if that helps encourage the further proliferation of the product because it is open source. But until you really get that full adoption across the full ecosystem of full solution and the content and that full engagement, it really could still kind of keep it in that resi space more so than moving all the way over into commercial.
It's also going to be critical to understand how you mix for it. Because if mixing for it is a pain in the butt, people aren't going to bother, you know?
Yeah, there are 100 years ago when I was messing around in Pro Tools, and I say messing around, I taught Pro Tools. That was one of the aspects that was both fascinating and terrifying to me, which was mixing for surround sound at the time, which was 7.1, 7.2. That still scared the you-know-what out of me, even back then. and this is 20 years ago now. So yeah, I can't imagine mixing for this, Bren. There's no way.
It'd be great for
and-
gameplay. It fits in automatically with gameplay.
Yep. And in gameplay, they can invest the time and energy to mix for that, right? And they can optimize for that. In a lot of conference rooms and those other kinds of settings, you don't have the time to do that kind of mixing, right? Now AI can certainly help and simulate some of that mixing, take some of the burden off of mixing for that per se. And so I think that's another reason why it will kind of really dominate in Resi and may find it harder to have applicability in the commercial space, because in Resi, the content that you're consuming is so often built in a way that would justify that kind of deliberate mixing and design, right? Games and movies and all of that kind of content, where in commercial spaces, especially in meeting rooms, it's more live and it's an ad hoc meeting, right? And you're brainstorming on how do you fluff the specs on this new product because it doesn't actually stand out, right? And you don't need mixing for that. So I think that will keep it less adopted in the commercial space, but I think it is pretty interesting on the Resi space.
Justin, what was your first thoughts when you saw Samsung and Google come together for an audio product?
I think, Tim, it's what first came to mind as, wow, Google is really dipping their toes in a lot of different areas at the moment. And even if you kept it to the residential type of area, this is very interesting in a smart home environment. If you have like a load of Google devices like I do, I hope I don't set any off by just saying that word. But like if you're adapting that with your TV and your Google devices and your cameras and everything, it's very interesting. It's a good way to test it into the commercial environment. Now, when I say putting it into the commercial environment, the first thing that rings in my head is the IT AV support person's worst nightmare, because as you just said, there's an open source system, there's probably Android as well, which I know a lot of campuses here in Ireland don't want to touch as much as a programming perspective. So yeah, it's nice to see that they're testing it out in residential. It's good to see that Google isn't trying to do this on their own, because there's a lot of times in the past where Google has brought out a product, they haven't put it in the developing
hundreds.
in the pack. Yeah, hundreds, if not thousands. So it's nice to see that they're teaming up with Samsung. It's interesting to watch. Yeah, it's one to watch for the future.
Well, Samsung has the sales channel, right?
Yes, yeah.
True.
And the hardware in the room, right? And that hardware is so important to that last mile delivery. It's one thing to publish a spec and make it open source and then hope the world embraces it. But until it actually gets embedded in a piece of hardware that is in front of people, it doesn't really matter. So I think it does make a lot of sense for them to do it together.
And really, until people who do this sort of audio really kick that open source, hard to see how it works, this is still a video product, really. It's an audio augmentation for a video product. Whether or not that is actually an audio product that you're going to really develop mixes for, is a question that I have. I want to see it first and see how people use it to know that it is truly an audio product versus just being enhanced audio for a display.
All right, that'll be a good place to stop. It'll be it's a great first one for the year, so I appreciate you guys. Bren Walker from Kierkegaard, thank you, ma'am. How do people connect with you or Kierkegaard?
Bren at Kierkegaard.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, but I'll say this even more so now in 2025, having spent the holidays with my mobile phones off for 2 weeks. Do not be surprised if I don't message you back right away. But I'm going to try to be more present on LinkedIn in 25. I am not on any other socials, and the way they're going, I can't see a reason to be. So,
I am with Bren there. I did spend the holidays pretty much unplugged. Mr. Dawson, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
Thank you for having me on again, Tim. You can visit my website, www.justinordawson.com. I'm on most of the socials. I've actually tipped into TikTok only recently, but I don't post there. I'm just looking. I've got down that dangerous
off
rabbit hole.
Just
Yeah.
get off. You're fine.
And of course, and I will be at ISE as well. I will be around with a microphone and camera. If you see me, do stop me. And if I'm resting, I will be resting at the HETMA booth, the Higher Education Technology Managers Alliance, where I have been put as a European executive. So we're going into Europe. So please come talk to us. If you're working higher ed in Europe, please do come by the HETMA booth.
HETMA rules.
Joe will give you an extra beer for that.
It's true.
Mr. Hensey, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or Crestron?
Crestron.com, certainly. I'm also on LinkedIn as Brad Hinsey. And then if you're at ISE, please stop by the booth. Say hello to me. We are in Hall 3. H300 is our booth. You can't miss it, though, once you get into Hall 3. So hope to see you at ISE.
I will warn you that if you connect with Hensey on LinkedIn, he does things like use phrases like skibbity riz or something like that.
Straight fire, bussin', and slay.
Bussin'. And
Throw
now
that
Mitchell's going to
dude.
cut
Love
this
it.
and use this as the intro. You realize that now.
I know.
I feel old.
Gummit.
You should definitely drop a link into it.
We're not going to talk about Shaq breaking the video
We're
wall.
not going to talk about Mitchell. Put a link into Shaq. Shaq broke an LED board.
Like, you can't have redundancy stuff, Tim, and have stupid people bang the wall and then just go, "Can you fix this?" Yeah.
I think it's the reality of technology everywhere. We're gonna have to deal with more and more of this.
Yeah. And AI can't even fix stupid either.
Nope.
But it can make it feel, somewhat acceptable. Anyhow, all right. Go follow those folks. Don't follow me on any social media platform. If you'd like, you can. I have started writing things other than AV that you can find on LinkedIn. So that much I will at least promote, and you can find my writings there. But go by the website AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. Mitchell just put up a brand new State of Control, talking about updates and upgrading your control system. So check that out. If you're going to ISE and you don't know Crestron's super secret code to get a free patch, you can use AVNation's AVNation MAG. That is our code, but we will 100% be going to ISE. You can check out those previews. They have already started. One is with Mr. Brad Hensey. Mr. Blackman's on there as well. But yeah, we'll be there the 4th through the 7th of February. I do not have the registration page done yet, but hopefully by the time that this posts, I will. The tweet up, which will be at HDBaseT's booth, will be from 4:30 until 6 on Tuesday, the 4th. So you can just come hang out with us then. Last thing, our awards, our Reader's Choice Awards are in full swing. Round 2 is starting as we are posting this, so we'll go check that out as well. All that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.